Good morning, y'all. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Dustin Jones. I'm one of two lead faculty within the Older Adult Division of the Institute of Clinical Excellence. It's Wednesday. That means it's hump day. That means you likely got an awesome email from Jeff Moore. That also means it is Jerry on Ice. Good morning, Will. How we doing? Jerry on Ice, that is where either myself, Christina Previtt, or Alex Germano get on the mic and we riff on something related to older adults that we find pertinent in our practice, in our day-to-day lives, and the conversations that we have with other clinicians. Jeff Musgrave, good morning, sir. So today's topic, intentional underdosage, why, when, and how. Intentional underdosage, why, when, and how. Now, the reason that I'm going to speak to this is because we are often known for, speaking to the issue in geriatrics of underdosage. We're not the only ones that speak to this. Even the APTA has spoken up against this in the Choosing Wisely statement that was released a few years ago. In terms of that is one of the biggest issues in physical therapy is the underdosage of therapeutic exercise, especially in the world of geriatrics. So we speak to this heavily. Dale Avers, if you've read the white paper on strength training for the older adult, that's the whole reason for that paper. There would be no white paper if it wasn't for this big issue in our field. And so we speak heavily to this. However, we do not want the consistent message of proper dosage of exercise to overshadow the reality that sometimes underdosage is beneficial. And sometimes we want to underdose to achieve the end goal with our patients and our clients. So I want to speak to that today. This is a common conversation that we have in modern management of the older adult essential foundations. This cohort is wrapping up tonight. This current cohort and the new cohort starts tonight as well. So if you want to get in on that 8 p.m. tonight, you have some room to sign up for that. There's about 10 spots left at the moment. But this is a common conversation, especially after our 5th week. So the 5th week, we take a lot of what we learned in the first 4 weeks and actually apply it to a 4-week program where people actually have to write out the exercise that they're going to do based on these cases and the progressions and why. And we get to kind of pick it apart. We talk about it in the group and just kind of walk away with a lot of themes. And a big conversation is where would we may want to underdose initially so we can achieve a proper dosage of intensity down the road. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So the why, when, and how. So the why. This is a interesting concept, I feel, because, especially in the world of ice, we talk about building the bike. If you're not familiar with building the bike, you should search a podcast that Jeff Moore did on that a few years ago, but we readily speak to this in our courses. The gist of it is building the bike is how we can make our services tangible for our patients and clients. How can we make it very, very clear that we are able to change our patients' or clients' lives, that we can have a demonstratable improvement or progress in a very short period of time. We're always trying to build the bike. We're always wanting to demonstrate and show our value. Now, there comes a time, especially in the world of geriatrics, where your goals as a clinician are to improve someone's strength, to improve their squat, their deadlift, or their just overall, aerobic capacity, for example. Those may be your goals. But your patient's goals may be just to not feel terrible. They want to be able to go up and down the stairs without knee pain. They want to be able to pick up their grandkid without back pain. And so we have these, I wouldn't say conflicting goals, but they're different goals. And so we want to build the bike for our patients or clients in a way that actually matters to them, that they actually care about. So if I know I want to get someone stronger, however, they just want to get out of pain, I need to help them get out of pain, and then we can talk about getting them stronger. And I think that in that scenario, that is a big why we may want to underdose exercise initially, because we want to show value to our patients in a way that they actually care about. I don't want to go out day one, guns a-blazing, at an appropriate intensity of exercise to where, I know it's a good session. I know they're going to get that physical adaptations, but then in 1 or 2 days, they're absolutely miserable because they have delayed onset muscle soreness. And in the first place, all they wanted to do was have their pain reduced a little bit. And actually, I've made them more uncomfortable as a whole. That is not a good scenario. There's some individuals that will respond okay to that. They understand that's a part of the process. However, there are a lot of people that will not understand that and will view that as you actually did harm to them, that you did not help them in the long run. So we want to really build the bike in a way that people, in a way that they actually actually care about. And in those scenarios, if they're wanting to reduce their irritability, reduce their pain, if strength is not a big concern for them, even though you perceive it to be an issue, we may want to consider underdosage in that scenario. Now, the when, what people do we want to think about underdosing? I think there's a few scenarios we need to think about. First off, just getting an idea of who this person is and their behaviors, their activity levels. What is their day-to-day life? Do they have an exercise routine? Kind of get a big picture view of what their physical activity levels look like currently. And in the world of geriatrics, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes we are working with individuals that may be very sedentary, especially if you're in, let's say, a home health setting, a very sedentary environment when people are constrained to their homes, and we need to really consider that. So low physical activity levels, that may be a good scenario to potentially underdose. Another one is when someone is highly irritable. Obviously, we want to use the symptom behavior model to reduce their symptoms, but we really want to respect their irritability and focus on reducing that irritability. And that may mean underdosing some exercise that you perceive to be important, like a squat, a deadlift, loaded carry, something along those lines. So we want to consider that. However, the caveat is let that symptom behavior model guide you in terms of how they're responding to these exercises. But if someone is very, very irritable and you're wanting to get them moving, underdosage may be helpful. And when I say underdosage, I mean they're capable of more, but you're giving them less than what is kind of the threshold for adaptation. All right, so that may be that they can do a solid goblet squat with a 26-pound kettlebell, but because they're irritable, there may be a lot of fear involved. You may hand them that 18-pounder, and that's fine. That's fine. That's okay. All right, so low physical activity levels, someone that's highly irritable, and then last but not least, that third scenario I think is very important and prevalent in many of the people that we work with, is their beliefs and expectations. What prior experiences have they had in the world of physical therapy? I've got lots of stories in terms of the different, rubber band slingshot exercises that people have described to me. But what are their beliefs and expectations about movement, about exercise? Is there a lot of fear around higher intensity involved? If that is the case, initially when we're working with people and we're trying to build that therapeutic alliance, we may want to respect their fear, push into it a little bit, but the end result may be an underdosed activity, and that is perfectly fine. Do they really believe in the power of the pink dumbbell or the green TheraBand? I've had lots of patients that have really sworn by, yeah, I did, these shoulder presses or lateral raises with that pink dumbbell for about 8 weeks with my therapist, and that really fixed up my shoulder. Even though they're capable of a whole lot more and they likely need more to have adaptation, we may want to leverage that pink dumbbell. We may want to leverage that green TheraBand, even though it may be underdosed in their capacity. If they believe that it's going to help them and they have those expectations, we can start there, and that's fine. But we may not necessarily want to stay there. We want to try and progress, but starting there is not that big of an issue. So their beliefs and expectations. There's a lot of fear involved, a lot of fear avoidance behaviors. Do they expect some of these, lighter weight implements to really improve their capacity? We can leverage that initially, and then we want to progress further. I think a big thing that I think about, and I've experienced, is when you bring in like a new piece of equipment. Let's say if you're a home health clinician and you bring in a kettlebell. What's up, Alex? Alex can speak to this. When she brings in a kettlebell to someone's home, their eyes light up. I've had someone say, "What's that? Is that a bowling ball with ears?" And they had no clue what a kettlebell was. They usually call it kettle ball or cow ball. But it's a new implement. They don't know exactly, how to use it. They have these preconceived notions that, that's for young individuals. That's for, those CrossFitters that work out with their shirts off, those 20-some-year-olds. But we know that's not the case. However, they may have those perceptions. And so we may want to be very gradual in introducing some of those things, which may result in underdosage. All right, so that's the why, that's the when, and then now the how. How do we actually implement this underdosage? And I speak to this more from mistakes than anything. If you've taken MMOA Essential Foundations or MMOA Live, I often speak to the time I literally sent someone to the emergency department for delayed onset muscle soreness. I didn't send them there. They actually called 911 the next day because I'm an idiot. But I've learned a ton from mistakes. And so these are some things that I think about with individuals when we're starting to really implement load and how we can think about underdosage. The first thing is what does their movement practice look like? And I know when you hear that term and you think of some of your older adult patients, many of them don't have a movement practice per se, but they do. They have some patterns. They have some consistencies. Is their movement practice involve getting up and down from their recliner and then, walking to the kitchen, walking to their bathroom, getting in and out of bed? Well, then we get an idea of what range of motion are they working through, what movements are they utilizing throughout their day. That's a very common scenario in the world of home health, that people may literally only leverage about 90 degrees of their knee, a range of motion throughout the day because they don't have a movement practice that is asking much more of their range of motion or their strength. Then you have people on the opposite end of the spectrum that are very active, that play sports or attend, fitness classes, things along those lines. That they have a greater movement variability. They have greater physical activity levels, and that can be helpful. For the folks that have that very limited movement variability to where they may not be leveraging their full range of motion on a day-to-day basis, and we typically are going to leverage some of these compound, total body movements like a squat, a deadlift, loaded carry, for example, that we may want to perform some of these movements with no weight or very lightweight, even though they're capable of so much more. Because even moving through a new range of motion for many individuals that they don't regularly access can cause some discomfort in the sense of delayed onset muscle soreness down the road. Even though you know that they are doing that movement unweighted, without load, that they can handle, that, 18-pound kettlebell or that 26-pound kettlebell, that you can do that and they'll do just fine that day, but they're likely going to not really like your name the next day or two because of that soreness that can happen. So I tend to be very conservative with folks that may be rather sedentary. They don't have a lot of movement variability in their life, that we may introduce some of these activities with a greater range of motion but lower load. And then as I know that they're responding to that well and I can see they're getting some buy-in, then we're going to increase load over time. I think this is tough if you have limited visits with individuals, obviously. So this is where we need to kind of be a guide and give people recommendations on how to progress things. If this, then that. That's when you want to go up in load or volume as well. So we need to be a guide in that situation and help them. So limited movement variability or physical activity levels, get an idea, and that can help you assess. And then the big one is the symptom behavior model and leveraging rating of perceived exertion. How are their symptoms behaving to these particular activities? That is largely going to guide, what we're going to do. And I think equipping individuals to really understand what that means. That, okay, if I do, this activity with this particular weight and my symptoms don't necessarily elevate or reduce right when we're done, there's not a big flare up, then okay, I can keep kind of riding this line and that's perfectly fine. Or the other end of the spectrum is if I do this activity, my pain spikes, it doesn't go down immediately after the exercise, it kind of lingers for a long time afterwards, then we may want to dial some things back. To equip these people to be able to critically think about how their symptoms are behaving can be helpful. And then last but not least, the rating of perceived exertion. I think that subjective report, leveraging that RPE, can be very empowering for individuals, for them to know that they're ultimately in the driver's seat of their course of care, that we are listening to how they're perceiving this activity. And yeah, we're going to push them a little bit, but letting that RPE really guide a lot of that intensity. And initially, with a lot of individuals, especially in the world of geriatrics, and when intentional underdosage may be warranted, their perceived, 9 out of 10 or sometimes 11 out of 10 is in reality maybe they're 5 out of 10. If they're not regularly lifting, they're not regular exercises, their perception of what they're capable of is not accurate with reality. We may be able to see that and know they're capable of so much more, but they don't see that just yet. They don't see that just yet. And it is our role to be guides to show them what they are capable of. And that role may include some intentional underdosage to where we get to the point where we are at an appropriate intensity to get adaptation. So let me know if y'all have any thoughts, questions about that. This is something that we talk about a lot in Essential Foundations because, we're not evaling people day one and then, testing their 1 rep max, goblet squat. That's not the case whatsoever. encourage you to try that and see what happens. It won't be pretty, but it's often this very nuanced approach where we're considering all these different factors, and it's a big conversation with individuals where we're working together to kind of bring in appropriate intensity at the beginning that is going to help our therapeutic alliance down the road, and we're going to gradually build up as we go. So that's kind of how we think about things. I'd love your all's thoughts. Comment on this Instagram TV post or on the Facebook video. If you are listening to the podcast, thank you for tuning in, but check out these videos as well. There's a lot of good discussions on these threads. Before I leave, Modern Management of the Older Adult, Essential Foundation. So our 8-week online course, the next cohort is starting tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, September 2nd. We would love to have you in there. We've got about 10 spots left. They're likely going to be going throughout the day, so I would get on that sooner than later. If you have any questions about that course or certification, Modern Management of the Older Adult, CERT MMOA, hit me up, hit Alex up, or hit Christine up. We'd love to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm out. Y'all have a lovely Wednesday. Talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.